The announcement came on a humid summer morning, the kind of day when sports headlines usually get lost between baseball box scores and preseason football hype. But this one didn't get lost. It exploded. Caitlin Clark left off Team USA Olympic roster. Those words lit up social media like wildfire. Within minutes, hashtags like #JusticeForCaitlin and #ClarkSnub trended worldwide. Fans couldn't believe it. The biggest name in women's basketball, the player drawing record-breaking crowds, the rookie who had single-handedly made people care about WNBA ticket sales, was going to the Olympics. It didn't make sense, at least not on the surface. For months, the basketball world had been buzzing about Caitlin's transition from college legend to professional star. Every game she played became a spectacle. Even away games sold out. Kids lined up for hours to see her. Not just girls with ponytails and dreams, but grown men holding jerseys, parents begging for autographs, grandparents saying they hadn't cared about basketball in years until now. She was more than a player. She was a phenomenon. And yet, Team USA didn't want her. The official explanation from the selection committee was short and clinical. We picked the roster we believe gives us the best chance to win. That was it. No mention of her name. No acknowledgement of her unprecedented impact. Just a vague statement. As if she was some random player cut from a high school team. Fans were furious. Sports talk shows erupted with debates. How can you leave your biggest star at home? One analyst shouted on ESPN. She's too inexperienced for international play, countered another. But under the surface, there were whispers, rumors that this wasn't just about basketball. Here's what you need to understand about Olympic basketball. It's not just about who's good. It's about politics, relationships, history. The roster is shaped by a tight circle of veteran players, coaches, and executives who've been together for years. They value loyalty. They value chemistry. And sometimes they don't value outsiders who disrupt the balance. And Caitlin Clark? She wasn't just an outsider. She was a threat. From the moment she stepped into the WNBA, she brought something the league had been chasing for decades: mainstream attention. Her games were pulling more viewers than some NBA playoff matchups. That kind of attention changes everything, from ticket revenue to sponsorship deals to how the public sees the sport. But attention can be a double-edged sword. It can make teammates feel overshadowed. It can make veterans, who spent years grinding in relative obscurity, feel resentful. And it can make powerful people nervous when the spotlight shifts away from them. By mid-season, there were already murmurs of tension in locker rooms, stories of hard fouls, players refusing to help her up after a collision, offhand comments and interviews that felt like subtle jabs. At first, fans brushed it off. Every rookie gets tested. But looking back, maybe it wasn't just rookie hazing. Maybe it was the beginning of something bigger. One unnamed player told a reporter off the record, "Caitlin's got talent, no doubt, but she's not one of us yet. She's still got to earn it." Earn it? She'd already broken records in college. She was putting up historic numbers as a rookie. But to some, that wasn't enough. She hadn't paid her dues. She hadn't gone overseas in the off-season to grind in empty gyms for low pay like so many others had. She hadn't spent years on the bench waiting for a chance. Instead, she walked into the league and immediately became the face of it. And for certain veterans, that was hard to swallow. The Olympic roster is decided behind closed doors in meetings most fans will never see. But sources say those discussions this year were heated. Caitlin's name came up. Some argued she'd bring a wave of new fans to the games. Others argued she wasn't ready, that she was too young, too inexperienced, that the team needed cohesion, not chaos. And then there were the sponsorship politics. Caitlin's endorsement deals were skyrocketing. Nike, Gatorade, you name it, everyone wanted her. That kind of commercial power doesn't just sell shoes. It shifts influence in the sport. And there were whispers that some of the old guard didn't want that kind of influence inside Team USA just yet. Because once Caitlin Clark was in that locker room, she might not just be a teammate. She might be the star of the entire Olympic Games. The day the roster dropped, Caitlin herself kept it classy. She smiled in interviews. She said she respected the decision. she said she'd be cheering from home. But if you watched closely, you could see it, a flicker in her eyes, the kind you only see in athletes who've been underestimated their whole lives. She wasn't happy, and maybe she was starting to understand why this happened. But here's the thing, everything I've told you so far, that's just the surface. The real reason she was left off Team USA, it's deeper, more personal, and it starts with a moment from months earlier. A moment almost no one outside the league noticed at the time. A moment that may have sealed her fate long before the roster was even announced. It was late in the season, and Caitlin Clark was already the hottest ticket in women's basketball. Every arena she stepped into felt electric. Fans holding homemade signs. Cameras flashing the moment she touched the ball. But that night, something was different. The game was in a smaller market, the kind of city that didn't usually make national headlines. It was supposed to be routine. But in the third quarter, the energy shifted. A hard foul, a very hard foul. Caitlin had been slicing through the defense all game. On one play, she caught the ball at the three-point line, pump faked, and drove toward the basket. She never made it there. A veteran forward, one who happened to be a longtime Team USA regular, stepped in hard, shoulders squared, and sent her crashing to the floor. The crowd gasped. The ref's whistle blew. Caitlin lay there for a second, clutching her side. But here's what caught people's attention later. When the replays hit social media, not one player from the opposing team offered her a hand up. Not one teammate rushed over immediately. She got up on her own, slowly. The broadcast crew tried to play it off as a physical game, but fans online weren't buying it. Why are they targeting her? One tweet read, "That was straight up dirty," said another. And in the hours after the game, the clip went viral. Not just a foul, but what happened after. Cameras caught Caitlin, walking toward her bench, exchanged words with the veteran forward. You couldn't hear what was said, but you could see it. Caitlin's jaw tightened. The other players smirked. It didn't look like friendly trash talk. What most fans didn't know at the time was that this moment didn't end on the court. Behind the scenes, it exploded. Sources say that after the game, there was tension in the locker room. Caitlin, frustrated and sore, made it clear she felt targeted. A couple of teammates reportedly told her to shake it off, that this is a WNBA, and if you can't handle physical play, you won't last. But Caitlin didn't back down. She played through elbows, double teams, and trash talk her whole career. But she wasn't going to pretend this was normal. Later that week, something unusual happened. Caitlin skipped a closed-door Team USA training camp invite in favor of resting an injury from that game. On paper, it was a smart move, protecting her body. But to certain insiders, it sent the wrong message. If you're going to be part of Team USA, they say, you show up, hurt or not. And here's where it gets tricky. The player who fouled her, she was at that camp. And she's a voice that carries weight in USA basketball circles. In the months that followed, reporters noticed subtle shifts. During interviews, veteran players spoke about earning respect and understanding the culture. Nobody said Caitlin's name, but fans connected the dots. And yet, Caitlin kept playing at an elite level. She kept filling arenas, breaking viewership records, and inspiring kids across the country. But in the minds of some veterans, she was an outsider who hadn't yet paid her dues. The foul incident became an unspoken turning point. One former Team USA assistant coach, speaking anonymously, told a podcast, "International ball is about chemistry as much as talent. If you got a player who doesn't fit the group, it doesn't matter how good they are. Sometimes you just wait. That's the word that kept coming up. Some saw it as patience. Others saw it as politics. Because make no mistake, Caitlin could have been on that Olympic roster from a pure basketball standpoint. She had the shooting, the vision, competitive fire. But the selection process isn't a meritocracy. It's a club. And Caitlin, she hadn't been invited in yet. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. You see, leaving her off the roster wasn't just about keeping her out of the locker room. It was about controlling a narrative. Team USA didn't want the games to become the Caitlin Clark show. They wanted it to be about them, the dynasty, the veterans, the legacy. And there was one more thing, something that came out in a private meeting between USA basketball executives. A conversation that, according to a source close to the team, revealed exactly why Caitlin never had a real shot this year. In that meeting, one committee member reportedly said, "If we take her now, she's the face for the next decade. Everything changes. Are we ready for that?" That wasn't about talent. That wasn't about defense or turnovers or experience. That was about control. They knew the moment Caitlin Clark walked into that Olympic arena, the cameras would follow her. Every headline would be hers. And for a program built on hierarchy and loyalty, that was too much, too soon. Caitlin herself has never spoken about the foul incident in detail. She's kept her answer professional, deflecting to just playing hard and staying focused on my team. But people close to her say she felt it. The cold shoulders, the whispers, the little moments that told her she wasn't fully accepted. And here's the thing. She may have already known her Olympic fate long before the announcement. The night before the roster reveal, Caitlin posted something cryptic to her Instagram story. Just 6 words, white text on a black background. Some things aren't meant for now. Fans didn't know what to make of it. But looking back, it feels like a clue. Because what happened next, after the snub, after the public outrage, wasn't Caitlin fading away quietly. It was the start of something bigger. Something that would put her on a collision course with the very people who left her off the team. And in that fight, she wouldn't be alone. When the roster snub became public, the sports world split into 2 camps. On one side, you had the establishment, veterans, executives, and analysts defending the decision as strategic. On the other, you had everybody else. Fans, sponsors, and, surprisingly, a growing number of players, some of them inside the WNBA. The night after the announcement, Caitlin Clark's phone didn't stop buzzing. Teammates checked in. Friend from her college days sent messages of disbelief. But the text that stood out came from unexpected sources. Players from rival teams. One message simply read, "Now you know how this works. Call me." It came from a player Caitlin had faced in college, one who'd beaten her on the biggest stage, but always respected her game. They'd never been close. But now, there was a shared understanding. This wasn't just a snub. This was a power move. Within a week, Caitlin found herself invited to a private dinner in a quiet Chicago steakhouse. No media, no publicists, just 5 women. A mix of current WNBA players, retired legends, and one former Team USA member who had her own history with being left off a roster. They didn't waste time with small talk. One of them leaned in and said, "This isn't about your game. It's about keeping control. They've been doing this for decades." What followed was an unfiltered crash course in the politics of USA basketball. They told Caitlin about the inner circle, a network of decision-makers who control not just Olympic rosters, but endorsements, speaking opportunities, and even certain media narratives. They decide who gets pushed to the front and who gets told to wait their turn. They told her about the unwritten rule. If you want in, you don't rock the boat. And they told her about the others who'd been snubbed before her. Players with Hall of Fame resumes who were mysteriously left out at the peak of their careers. Some had fought back. Most had stayed quiet. But Caitlin, she wasn't the quiet type. She listened. She asked questions. She took notes, literally on her phone. Not because she planned to start a war, but because she understood something important. The people in that room weren't just warning her. They were offering her something, an alliance. One retired player put it bluntly, "You have the spotlight now. Use it, because if you don't, they'll bury you under their system until your prime is gone." It was the first time Caitlin fully grasped that her snub wasn't the end of the story. It was leverage. The public outrage over her exclusion wasn't fading. In fact, it was growing. Every news cycle seemed to circle back to one question. Why isn't Caitlin Clark in Paris? That question was starting to make the people in charge uncomfortable. Behind the scenes, Caitlin's endorsement partners weren't thrilled either. She was a major investment for them, and the Olympics would have been a global stage to showcase her brand. One insider at a sports marketing agency leaked that pressure was mounting on USA Basketball to explain the decision in more detail. And while the committee doubled down publicly, privately they were scrambling. They weren't used to this kind of pushback. Meanwhile, Caitlin kept winning games, kept selling out arenas, kept smiling for cameras while the storm swirled around her. But those who knew her best noticed a shift. Her answers in interviews became sharper, her focus more intense. One game in particular stood out. It was against a team loaded with current and former Team USA players. Caitlin dropped 38 points, dished 9 assists, and hit the game-winning 3 in overtime. She didn't celebrate wildly. She just looked directly into the opposing bench as if to say, "You made a mistake." That night, one of the players from Chicago dinner sent her another text. Now they're nervous. In the weeks that followed, the alliance quietly expanded. More players, especially younger ones, started voicing their support, not in loud, public ways, but through subtle acts, liking certain tweets, mentioning Caitlin in interviews, even rocking her jersey during warm-ups. It wasn't just a show of solidarity. It was a signal. To USA Basketball, it meant something dangerous. Caitlin Clark wasn't just a star. She was becoming a rallying point for those tired of the old guard's grip on the sport. And then came the leak. A reporter with a history of breaking WNBA and Team USA stories published an explosive claim. According to his sources, there had been a heated exchange during a pre-selection meeting. One veteran reportedly said she wouldn't play in the Olympics if Caitlin was on the roster. The story didn't name the player. But fans didn't need names. Speculation exploded online. Clips of hard fouls against Caitlin resurfaced. Old interviews were dissected for hidden digs. The narrative shifted again. This wasn't just about experience anymore. This was about ego. The leak sent shockwaves through the basketball world. Team USA issued a carefully worded denial, but the damage was done. Sponsors began hinting they wanted fresh faces in future rosters. And the hashtag #FreeCaitlin started trending. That's when the alliance made their move. Caitlin was invited to appear on a primetime sports talk show. It was supposed to be a standard interview, talk about her rookie season, maybe touch on the Olympics. But halfway through, the host asked the question directly. Do you think there was a personal reason you weren't chosen for Team USA? Caitlin didn't flinch. She didn't accuse anyone by name. She didn't raise her voice. She just said, "I think some people aren't ready for change." It was a perfect answer. Short, sharp, and impossible to ignore. The clip went viral. Players from other leagues chimed in with support. And quietly, Caitlin's alliance celebrated. Because that one sentence wasn't just a response. It was a challenge. And somewhere in the halls of USA Basketball, the people who thought they could control the future of women's basketball realized something terrifying. The snub they orchestrated to keep Caitlin Clark out of the spotlight had just made her the most talked about player in the sport. And now, she was aiming higher than just making a roster. She was aiming to change the system. By the time the Olympic Games officially tipped off, Caitlin Clark wasn't in Paris. But in a way, she didn't need to be. Her name was everywhere. In sports bars across America, conversations drifted from box scores to one topic. Why isn't Caitlin Clark wearing red, white, and blue? Even commentators covering the games couldn't ignore it. Between plays, they slipped in references. You have to wonder how Caitlin Clark's shooting could have changed the dynamic here. The irony was brutal. Team USA was winning, but the headlines still belonged to the player they'd left behind. Meanwhile, Caitlin kept doing what she did best, playing ball. The WNBA season rolled on, and she played with a new edge. Every game felt like a statement. Every deep three, every no-look pass, every game winner seemed to scream, "I belong on that stage." But behind the scenes, the tension between her and the establishment was building towards something neither side could fully control. 2 weeks into the Olympics, a crack appeared. It started with a simple box score. Team USA had survived a surprisingly close game against an underdog opponent. They'd still won, but the scoreline was uncomfortably narrow. Social media erupted. Pundits started asking hard questions about roster choices. And then came the photo. A fan in Paris posted a snapshot from the arena concourse. A young girl wearing a homemade Clark number 22 USA jersey, even though Caitlin wasn't playing. The caption read, "We came to see our hero. She's not here. Why?" That post went viral. Within hours, thousands of fans shared their own stories of disappointment. Kids who begged their parents for tickets, only to find their favorite player wasn't part of the team. The narrative shifted again. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. This was about the connection between athlete and fan, a connection that the decision makers had underestimated. And then came the whistleblower. A former USA basketball staffer, anonymously at first, told a respected journalist that Caitlin's exclusion had nothing to do with her game. In fact, they claimed she graded out exceptionally in internal evaluations. The real reason? A handful of influential veterans had pushed back hard against her inclusion, citing chemistry concerns, a polite way of saying they didn't want her there. The journalist double-sourced it, published it. It hit like a bomb. Suddenly, this wasn't speculation. This wasn't Twitter theories. This was confirmation from inside the machine that the snub was political. Caitlin's phone blew up again. Reporters wanted comment. Sponsors wanted strategy. Her alliance, the quiet network of players who've been backing her, urged her to choose her next words carefully. But Caitlin didn't need to think long. She posted a single statement on her social media. "I'll let my game speak." And speak it did. On the very night Team USA advanced to the Olympic gold medal game, Caitlin was playing in front of a sold-out home crowd. The stakes weren't the same, but the atmosphere was electric. Every shot she hit felt like a message beamed across the ocean. She finished with a career-high 44 points, and as the final buzzer sounded, the fans began chanting, "USA, USA." It wasn't about the team in Paris. It was about the team they could have had. The gold medal game came and went. Team USA won as expected. The celebration was massive, but something was missing. TV ratings were high, but not record-breaking. Merch sales were solid, but not explosive. And as photos of the championship team circulated, so did memes comparing to the roster that never was. Caitlin Clark was front and center in every fan-made version. The morning after the games, USA Basketball held a press conference to address public interest in roster decisions. It was supposed to be routine, but halfway through, a reporter asked a question everyone had been waiting for. If Caitlin Clark was one of your highest-rated players in evaluations, why was she not on the Olympic team? The room went still. The spokesperson paused, and then, after a long sip of water, gave a carefully rehearsed answer about team chemistry and long-term planning. It wasn't enough. That clip spread just like the whistleblower story. And by then, the damage was irreversible. The snub had turned Caitlin Clark into something bigger than an athlete. She was a symbol of change, of fan power, of the shifting tide in women's sports. Her alliance knew it, sponsors knew it, and even the people who'd kept her out knew it. 3 months later, USA Basketball quietly announced a revamped selection process for future competitions, with a new emphasis on fan engagement and transparent criteria. They didn't name Caitlin. They didn't have to. Everyone knew whose shadow was on that press release. When Caitlin was asked about it in a live TV interview, she smiled, the same measured, unshaken smile she'd worn the day her snub became official. And then she said, "I'm just getting started." It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't revenge. It was a promise. Because if there's one thing Caitlin Clark had proven through this whole saga, it's that you can take her off a roster, but you can't take her out of the game. In fact, sometimes the greatest way to make history is to be left out of it first.